Let's talk D&D 3.5. So today I have two of my players with me. I have Josh and Loretta.
Hi.
Heyo.
So first off, I'm not even sure if I ever mentioned how long I've been playing on the podcast, but I've been basically only DMing for give or take 10 years, except for like one campaign where I was a player for like about a year. But that wasn't even with you guys. That was with my other group, which has now been like absorbed into our group. How
I
about
don't
you
know if
two?
10 years warrants an only.
Well, only DM though is what I meant. Mostly DM for 10 years, except for like the last year where I was a player.
Well, compared to that, I kind of feel like a youngling, I guess. But we've been playing for about 2-ish years, probably. Um, Especially like pen and paper kind of stuff. Before that, it was all, legit video games with fancy graphics. Um,
Yes.
but now I've been playing for about 2 years, just 3.5. At max, I was playing about 3 games a week. We're down to
Nice.
one now. It seems
Hey,
like
I feel honored. I know that game.
I'm not sure. Yeah, just fell down to 1 game a week. It's hard finding a group to gel with, and I think that was the real problem. But so I'm probably one of the newer people, I'm guessing, because y'all seem to know way more about this than I do.
Well, I too only have done 3.5. So, yeah, it's been a bit. But Josh, you do 5th ed too, right?
Yeah, I started in college, did a little bit of 3.0, um, and then came back, did a little bit of 3.5 right when they transitioned to 4. So I played 4 through its entire run, and then jumped in with 5th edition. Um, so I've been playing about probably 8 years, I think, and DMing's I guess about 7 years of that. But I've also
Cool.
played some Pendragon and Mouse Guard, and then I've also done some Pathfinder. But your game was the first time I guess I played a very brief 3.5. Like, I think we had 2 or 3 sessions of it
Ah,
before, so yeah, I'm all about the breadth instead of a lot of different types instead of sticking with one, so.
yeah, that's cool. Yeah, and I forgot that I started with 3rd edition. I just called 3.5 without even thinking about it. But yeah, 3rd edition was actually fairly different in the way it played just because of how stacking worked. I feel like when I think about 3rd edition and 3.5, the big difference that I always think about is that everything freaking stacked in 3.0. Like, it was kind of absurd when you think about
They
it.
didn't have like typed bonuses.
Well, I think there were typed bonuses, but you could still stack things. So like if you had a +2 enhancement bonus from a ring, and then the exact same like stat boost as an enhancement bonus on like your armor, they stacked. And then if you had a spell that had the same enhancement bonus, it stacked.
So it's the game equivalent of skipping leg day.
Yes. Uh,
Except look at my enhancement bonus and nothing else.
Either that, or you're right, and they just changed all the bonuses to different types for 3.5. But I mean, I think that was a good change, making things not stack. I feel like there's already just an inherent need to get as many things as you can. At least that reduces the ability to do so, so it's not as much of a game of rocket tag as quickly.
Yeah, that would definitely lend itself to sad builds as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
So,
But one thing I wanted to talk about was like getting people into D&D, or like for people that are just starting. So Loretta, you might have more of an idea, or just because you're newer than Josh or me, but like, what's like a good advice for somebody that's just starting?
It's probably good advice is actually just leave your house. Um, or if you don't want to do that, just jump online. Um, I think what we found out is you're probably not going to love the first group you get in with. You're just not. For some reason, it seems like it's always it's a certain type of person that can advertise well and bring new people in, and then they don't really want to stay there forever. Or the easiest groups to get in are the ones where it's just like a one shot in a week, or people are dropping in and out. Um, but there is a place for those groups. Just go ahead and give it a try. I haven't yet had anyone yell at me the first few weeks. Um, Eventually, yes. I did have one or two people that were not super nice after a while. But generally, everyone's just nice. Just go for it. Roll20 has really been great because unless you live in a big city, you're probably not going to find a group to play with in person. But yeah, just search through Roll20, find something, shoot an email, see if it works out, and just start trying it.
Any thoughts, Josh?
Yeah, one of the things that they say online that I agree with a lot is no D&D is better than bad D&D, and the group really does kind of make that a lot.
Yeah, I've heard some horror stories. I definitely agree with that.
So, and there's been a couple groups that I've started playing with, and it's just like I'm not coming back for another session because I don't like you people.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not even that I don't like you people; it's just I don't like the way you guys play.
Yeah.
And there's no point in trying to force yourself to do something that you don't enjoy when the whole point of it is to have a good time.
Exactly. It's a game. Some
So-
people lose sight of that.
No, you're definitely right about that. I'd say though, if you just want to try something, at least for the very first thing, if you're like, I just want to play D&D, you kind of have to play a few to know what works and what doesn't work. So we looked into it pretty well. That playing with you two was like the second-ish group we actually found, and it's worked out fantastic. The other two that I was in just did not go so well. Um, but I think also if you are in something, don't be afraid to just peace out if it's not working for you. There was definitely one game where I waited just a bit too long to leave because that's kind of like the downside of RPGs where you can get really into your character and you like your character. You just eventually get to a point where you hate everyone else around you. But you're sitting there, you're like, I put so much time into this. I've gone through like 5 levels. I have all this cool gear. And you're like, no, you just need to leave. These people are toxic. Just leave. But as I said, it was still a good learning experience because now I know very clearly what I don't want to see in a game. And it'll be a lot easier to just leave if I start seeing the same kind of patterns over and over.
And that's good to acknowledge or to recognize, yeah. That'll help you find what you like.
Yeah, because the downside I think that you can sometimes run into is that I haven't found anyone who's mean right off the bat, but sometimes it gets a little. Sometimes you can find yourself in groups that are just a bit too overwhelming because you're surrounded by people that have played for years and years and years and years and years. And hopefully you'll find a good group that will give you leeway, that'll talk you through stuff, that'll help you learn. But if you unfortunately find yourself in a group of, outwardly nice individuals, but with some pretty rigid, like, I've been doing this for 20 years and this is how I've always played it, yar, kind of thinking, then it can get a little iffy. So maybe a good thing to keep in mind is if you're trying to find a group, it's probably a good idea to just kind of find people that are also, maybe kind of in your same age bracket. At least they'll get all of the memes that you throw out and all of the pop culture references, so that's useful. But that might help too. Although I can't really knock older people either. Okay, I'm just talking myself in circles at this point.
No, it's all good. I think what you're hitting at is right on, though. Like, finding people with a like mind is important because really that's how you're going to enjoy it. And if everybody's on the same page with how they want to play the game, then that's all that really matters, because like one group is going to be way different from the next group. I remember my DM from the one campaign that I was a player in, he had joined a different group before he advertised his game on Roll20, and it wasn't advertised, but like he started using, I mean, his DM started using the Book of Erotic Fantasy, and like that was a big red flag. Like that wasn't something that he was expecting. That's not something he wanted. So he pieced out of that group, and like clearly, yeah, if you're gonna have something unusual like that, you need to be upfront about it. You need to find people that also want to do something strange like that. So I think most groups are more normal. Most groups aren't going to do that, something that bizarre. But like, if if you're looking for a group and maybe you don't quite know what you want yet, it would be good to ask about what kind of group it is, because there's some games that are more high fantasy, some games that are more sci-fi or western or other
erotic
setting.
fantasy.
Yeah, or that. And if that's not what you're looking for, then keep looking, because you'll find the game you want. But definitely communication is key.
And a DM perspective on that too. Like, if you're not having fun in the game, then you're going to drag everyone else down too.
Yes, yes.
I know that sounds really harsh, but like a player who's sitting there, not having fun, so they're just on their phone or whatever, and you're like, "So, what are you going to do, Bob?" And they're like, what's happening right now?"
Yeah.
Get out, man. Let someone else who wants to play and is going to enjoy that play.
Yeah.
And find a group that you're not going to be sitting on your phone during the time for. So
true.
That's been one of my kind of, it hasn't happened too often, but every once in a while you get the players who are just like, why exactly are you even bothering to show up?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, from a beginner side of that, though, sometimes if you're new, you really don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's fair and understandable, but like, it's not always the beginners that do that. I think sometimes, especially, it is the veterans who are the most guilty of that, because the game's not going the way they want, or they don't get to be the hero for however long, and so.
Yeah, I think related to that. So, as somebody who's never GM'd before, it's. I think it's also good to try to find, if you're a newer person, try to find a DM that seems pretty laid back. So like one of the 3 games I've run in, 2 of them had pretty laid back DMs, and one was pretty anal. So guess which category Mike falls into.
There you go. You're 1 out of 3, Mike.
You got a third of a chance. But having one that's flexible kind of helps out, because initially it seemed like a good idea. As a beginner, initially it seemed okay that the DM took a pretty hard line, like, roll to everything. But after a while, it starts feeling restrictive, and it actually got to be a pretty big negative. That doesn't mean you have to accept everything. We need rules. I like knowing what the general rules are. But the issue with this one was it was a little bit of it's like an ego kind of thing. Like, I'm the DM, and whatever I say goes, and don't you dare ask me to like discuss this during the game, because it takes up game time, and you can't do that right now. I'm like, okay. It seemed okay for a while, because I thought it was relatively straightforward. But then as you start getting used to your character and you move off from just roll to attack, if you're playing a spellcaster and you're trying to do different things, then I got screwed over a couple times. I'm like, I can totally do this. I know it. I've read this one. Well, I haven't read this one lately, and this is what I think it should be. Oh, God.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty bad.
That sounds a lot like the DM versus the players mentality, which is just toxic.
Yeah, that didn't work out so hot. The rest of it around it was okay. But yeah, so definitely just probably a good recommendation is find a DM that's pretty laid back, not super type A personality, not super into themselves probably also.
Something you'll notice is a lot of the stories that come from D&D when you read like the on Imager or Reddit or 4chan or whatever, the stories that you're reading probably are not run raw.
Yeah.
Like, that's a DM having some fun with his players. And if you want to expand, I mean, if that's what draws you to it, then yeah, you definitely want a DM who's willing to have some fun and, bend the rules or say, sure, the fireball can burn the guard's spear so it falls into whatever and, create your chain reaction or,
Yeah.
you know.
It's funny you bring that up because with me, whenever that type of situation happens, like there's always a two-phase thing that happens in my mind. Like the strange scenario comes up. I think you did something with Kohana last session that fits this perfectly. What was it? It was like
Jumping out of the.
yeah, I think that might have been one of the things. Yeah, and just going with it. And it's like the first thing that crosses through my mind is like the rules written, the raw. And I'm like, and then the next thing that like really quickly, like just a second or two later goes through my head is like, why not? It's not gonna do anything. Like, why not? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead, roll that jump check,
Yeah, that's pretty much my. When I'm playing my characters,
Yeah.
characters has to do something, you're like, well, you know what? Yeah, why not?
And I
That
think
seems
that's
like that could have funny results.
yeah, and like that's where having a flexible DM is so important because like again, it comes back to it's a game. Like yes, there are rules, and it's important that everyone understands the rules. Just because you're working together to do this game, if everyone was playing by a different set of rules, it wouldn't make any sense. But at the same time, to make things more enjoyable for everyone, especially each individual player who can choose their, any kind of action that a person could do, like, give them some leeway, like, let them have their fun. It's not going to hurt anything. So,
Except their ego when they roll a 1.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of personality also lends itself to, like, a hardliney kind of personality leans itself to having issues if you do kind of circumvent them. Because I've had that happen once or twice in a game or two where um, we're rolling through a fight, rolling through a boss, and suddenly it gets a skill 8 levels above what it should have and blinks out of existence because plot.
mm,
And you can do that once or twice. Plot is a thing, and if you really have a good idea of what should be happening with that, then sure, I get it. The problem is in one of the campaigns I was in, that happened repeatedly.
yeah.
Like everything started disappearing because of plot. Like there was this idea that you do a random roll for, well, actually it's pretty basic DMing, I'm guessing. You roll to see what you run into. Well, we kept running into things we, quote, weren't supposed to run into. And then didn't die to those and made some awesome rolls and killed something. Theoretically, we're about to kill something 6 levels higher than us for reasons. And a strong wind blows and he sails away into the distance. I'm like, holy crap. Next week, same thing. Oh, you weren't, this guy just disappears. What the heck? What? On the boat again. Oh, it's that guy that we almost killed last time. We can totally kill him this time. He's like, I think the DM was like, no, there's no way you're going to kill him. Oh, but we rolled well and almost killed him. And a whirlpool catches us, but he sails away into the distance like, oh, for Christ's sake, just give me my dang loot. That's all I want. And like I said, you can pull a character out of fire by plot plenty of times. I have no real issue doing that. But if you're doing that every week, you're doing something wrong.
Yep.
That kind of sounds like a DM who's not quite very good at thinking on his feet.
Yeah.
Because I know when I started out, it was, you've got an idea what's going to happen, and then players seem to instinctively understand what you want to happen and make sure it doesn't.
Yeah. The one thing that you can count on is that the players will do something you didn't count on happening.
Exactly. It's like the gospel of D&D right there.
Yeah.
And yeah, as a DM, man, when you're starting out, especially, it is it's difficult. Like
Yeah.
you're kind of on the spot. You've got these people just kind of like staring at you, like what's gonna happen? You're like, rocks fall, everyone dies. The end. Bye.
I don't remember a lot of my very early sessions as a DM, but I do remember feeling like I had no idea what to do in certain situations because of what my players were doing, and I just had to like make stuff up. And then after
Yeah.
the session, like take what I did then and come up with something for the next session. And it was always like that. It's like, okay, we'll do this. Blah, 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 something happens, and like, all right, now I did that. So now what?
It's stupid. Why would I say that?
Yeah,
Uh,
No, and if you have to save a nemesis that just rolled super poorly and the players rolled super well, I completely understand that. Heck, that happens in video games all of the time. Where, haha, you thought you beat me, but blah, and they just disappear. Um, I get it, it happens. It's a pain if it happens every single week. You're like, my shiny loot, I just want that thing that you have.
that's understandable too.
I don't know a lot about this module, the Red Hand of Doom, but I used to read like stories about it. It sounds pretty interesting. But one of the things, there's like a villain in it. You know, there's lots of villains, but like one of the villains in particular is one of the bigger, badder ones, and like you're supposed to lead up to it and everything. And there's like a timeline, and I think it's like several months long, like this timeline before you're supposed to reach this one big bad guy. And this story I read, the DM didn't know what the hell he was gonna do because the party, like within the first like 3 weeks, had already gotten to his like headquarters. They like tracked him down like way too fast and everything, and like got there before the enemy army was supposed to like lay siege to the land and everything. Skipped like all of everything, and he was like, "What do I do?" And it's just really funny because like that's the kind of thing that you'd expect to happen outside of a module. Like when you're making stuff up on the fly, you've got your own story. Like there are things happening that you don't expect to happen. Not when like the whole campaign is plotted out for you and there are events that are supposed to happen in order and everything. It was just an amusing story that I read.
No, I did that. I was running Princes of the Apocalypse, which is a 5e module, and it's hailed as one of the most loosely not very well put together modules.
Ah,
And so my 6th level party got to the 10th level dungeon because that's where, the plot led them, like,
yeah,
very logically. And I'm like, they start to go in and I'm like, like, you feel like these people, you see them as like a stone monk temple thing, I'm like, you see them training in the yard and they seem very strong.
yeah.
And
There's only
every
so many
step they
warnings.
take, I'm like, oh, these two, acolytes that you managed to lure out gave you guys a real run from your money. You're not sure if this is the best idea. And they keep going deeper and deeper. I'm just
Yep.
like, guys, come on.
Yep, yep.
And afterwards, a player's like, well, I didn't think you'd let us go into a place that was too high for us. And I'm like, what do you think I was trying to tell you this whole time?
The Dark Souls generation, we just have to.
Yeah, right.
You just kite them around forever and poke at them, and it will work out.
I think that's why it's important to always throw in something way too powerful every once in a while, just so that the players don't get the feeling like they're invincible and will win every encounter. Like they have to
See
know
themselves as mortal.
that they're mortal, right? They have to know they're mortal.
Kill one of them just to make sure they understand who's the boss.
Well, the way I see it is like it's always this it's PC versus NPC. It's not DM versus player, but it's PC versus NPC. There's always going to be far more NPCs than PCs. So everything is weighed against the players. like if you're thinking about like variant rules that affect like mass death from massive damage, like that, there's so many more times that the players are going to be faced with massive damage than any individual NPC. There's going to be so many more attacks targeted against any individual PC than any individual NPC that the PCs are going to win way, 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 way more fights. So every once in a while, there needs to be an encounter that can't be won by combat, or at least not without like casualties, like you said, Josh, like somebody dies, because they have to remember like, okay, we are the heroes. Well, not always. That's not always the case, but we are the PCs.
We're the protagonists.
We're the protagonists. We're leading the story. Whatever story it is, we're gonna be fighting. We're gonna be winning, but we can lose. That can happen.
Oh, that's actually another good thing I recommend to newer people too. Those like one-shot kind of campaigns that you go in are great for learning, and if you have a real short attention span, it'll probably be good just going to those over and over. But if you get to a point where you actually like are getting serious and you want to make it like a weekly thing, find a steady group, because there's nothing more frustrating than when you got past, okay, how do these mechanics work? Okay, I know how they work, and now I know how these spells work, and you want to start doing tactics, which is part of the fun part of the game, at least for me anyway. There's nothing worse than trying to do that with you have a constant revolving number of people coming in and out, because then every week you don't know if the people around you are going to be
Absolute idiots.
yes. Sometimes they're idiots because they just don't know, and that's fine. And you just sigh really heavily, and you're like, maybe you should consider flanking one day or not running into the fire. But then sometimes you do get people that come in that are just dicks if you don't have kind of like a steady group going on, or are just too crazy, or it's just hard to plan around without tactics if you don't know what people are going to do. Like even the last one we ran, where Josh, you were Gargog, we knew what you were going to do after a while. Was it always going to help the party? No. But I knew you were going to run away.
Tactically,
I
retreat.
usually came back, okay?
Yeah. You would come back. Usually right at the end to crit kill something.
Yeah, that was always amazing how that would happen.
But we knew, so the rest of us would just be like, okay, this is what we do. You go here, I go there. We wait, Gargog! And we're good to go.
See, in here I thought we had such a good dynamic.
See, we did. That's the thing, because it started being the same people. And it was a little like fuzzier in the beginning when we had a couple people dropping in and out.
Yeah.
But still, there was still four of us the whole time.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Like, I felt like that core group, we got really, like, it feels weird in this campaign so far. Like, I shouldn't be running.
One
Still trying
thing.
to figure out what everyone can do. Sorry,
yeah, that's true. Everybody is still figuring that out. And that's why I like starting from level 1, even though it can be like, oh, level 1, but still it gives you that sense of character development. But I just have to say this one time with Gargog, I remember I think it just wasn't a good spot for Gargog to jump into the fight. And it was like a square like a square shaped hallway, and the battle was happening in like one of the corners, and Gargog decided to go all the way around the hallway, and the fight ended by the time he got back.
There wasn't one time. That was like...
Oh, well, there's one time in particular that I remember it happening, and everybody was like, "Where did you go?"
Oh yeah, I do remember that. That was around the time where I think you got the haste boots or something.
I think so, yeah.
I can haste myself. I'll be there in no time.
Yeah.
8 rounds later. This was a longer haul than I thought it was going to be.
Well, yeah, so it's World's Largest Dungeon, right? So, like, there's a door. It looks like it should have just gone, like, 30 feet around to the other door. Nope. It was like 800 feet. And then I didn't even get there because there was a barricade around it. So I think that's the one you were with the goblins.
Yeah, I think that was it, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, we started affectionately calling that trying to flank around the room, doing a Gargog or pulling a Gargog. What do you guys call it?
Probably just pulling a Gargod. Just
Yeah.
going around the. It's like, I'll go around. Like, oh god.
I was
So
a
that-
rogue in my defense.
That was the other like funny thing in the World's Largest Dungeon. I remember my character Ellie. I wanted to die, and you wouldn't like let me die for a while, or it was very hard to. Because I
Well,
wanted to take that dip into Death Delver, and you're like, you have to have a near-death experience. And I'm like charging everything. I'm like, just hit me. And nothing was hitting me, and I wasn't dying, and it was sad.
yeah, the owlbear did take you down eventually.
Yeah, I literally just stood there. I'm like, I do nothing.
Uh,
So sometimes you don't have to throw something at players to, you know, make them feel the mortality. Sometimes they want to feel the mortality themselves.
that's
Or
true.
sometimes you just roll ones every time.
Oh
like
my gosh.
last week's
Yeah.
easy fight
Yeah.
that was supposed to take like 3 rounds,
Oh,
15.
that was painful.
So painful. I do feel
Essentially,
like Ellie was an off case for the near-death experience.
that was. Generally, I don't try to die.
Like, the reason I ran away was because I had a good reason to fear death.
You did. And you didn't have teleporter invisibility.
Yeah. And I came very close to dying several times. So,
Incredibly close.
incredibly
Oh.
close several times.
Ellie the cleric was never going to let you fully die.
No, there
Yeah.
were several times where you were not like. Do you remember the one with the? Oh, which were they?
The demon horde?
Not that one.
That was you. All you.
Yeah, that one you couldn't have taken either. But where I teleported into a room to get away from some of them, and then I teleported right into a group of 5 of them.
Yeah, the gnolls.
Yeah, the Knolls, that's what it was. I was so close to dead there.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. I think it was both you and was that Michelle?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, both of you almost bit it there.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that where he died? He
the
died?
other Josh too, right? Was he also Josh?
I don't think he was there for that
Maybe,
one.
but
The dragon one. They did. Oh no, they died to the ghost goblins.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
the ghost
oh,
that
yeah,
actually
like,
killed
was
them.
supposed to. I was like, you're supposed to get out of the room.
The shadows.
You're supposed to get out of the room. You're supposed to get out of the room. And they're like, no, I can hit them. Stop it. So yeah, it's good to find a group so that doesn't happen on a weekly basis, people.
Yeah, that was a. Michelle was an interesting one, but
Well, I hope that the current group works out well, because the 2 new players were like the good players from the campaign where I was a player. So
that does seem to be the way to do it. You like gather these players and then herd them into your own special little group.
yeah, hope it all works out. Seems like it's a decent mesh of everyone so far.
Yeah, for new players, that is actually good advice. If you want to find a group, you can go to like game stores and stuff, or just join those pickup, the weekly games and stuff, and find people you enjoy playing with, and then ask them if they know another game, or find another game with those people that you enjoy playing with, because oftentimes the public games get the people that don't quite make it in other games.
Yeah, I've heard similar stuff, like at a local game store or whatever, if there aren't many games, just offer to DM a game. People will come in. Eventually you find enough people, like enough good people, to have a game on your own. You just take it out of the store to your own home with a group of good people.
Yeah, people you can trust and you're willing to game with.
Right.
Because that's what I did for 5th edition, or 4th edition, is I did the weekly Adventurers League, and I had to stop because, you basically just have to accept everyone, and at a certain point, there's just people you don't want to have in your games, be it because they're someone who just doesn't pick up on social cues, or won't shut up, or... So,
Yeah, one of the DMs I ran with just started being a dick to those people until they left. That was awkward to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I think
I
that's
mean,
one way to
sometimes I
do it.
sympathized. I'm like, no, yeah, that person really is like probably the bane of the planet right now. But this is painful. Can we not do this now?
Yeah. Without naming names, our problem player, uh, I was probably too nice to the problem player. But I think that we managed well, despite that.
There were other people who were less nice.
Yes, that's true. I also let other people handle the less nice side of things.
Yeah. But it is a tough spot to be in as the DM because, like, it does feel like you don't want to do that publicly. It feels it's
It's,
horrible to do. Like, it's not
yeah,
fun, and
right.
you don't want to like ruin everyone's night just because. And you're like, is he just bugging me, or is he bugging everyone, or?
Yeah.
And so yeah. But with the public games that I was doing, it's not. You really don't have the ability to say, don't bother coming back because, you know. So, but it's nice with private games where you can deal with that on your own and say, hey, you're not making the game fun for other people, so bye.
I mean, some of that could also just be like, I wish there were more groups, especially in person ones, where you could just be like, hey, you don't seem to fit in on this one. Maybe you should try this one. Um, but I mean, I live in a relatively large city, and you just don't have that even here. Like looking around, I think there was only ever two or three, like 3.5 um, games going at any given time in person. Now, if you go to 5th edition, there's quite a bit more of those right now, so it might be easier for that. But if you really like 3.5, it's hard.
Yeah, I find that for me, I live in a smaller town, so I knew like straight off the bat, like there was no way in hell that I was going to find an in-person group here. So I just jumped straight to Roll20, and I think I got lucky like really fast because I found you guys as my first group on Roll20. So I definitely got lucky there because I've heard other people struggle with Roll20, but I don't know. I haven't experienced it. I would recommend Roll20 if you can't find a group in person.
Did you only advertise on Roll20, or was there Reddit ones too?
I think yeah, I used Reddit also, but I mean it was an
Okay.
advertisement for Roll20.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Because like, I think I've applied for like one Roll20 game and never like received responses for maybe like two or three, but yeah.
yeah,
So
There aren't even that many 3.5 that are public. I think they're all getting a little hidden now. Because I remember after, what is it? Like I said, I had 3 games going at once. When it knocked down to one, I was like, oh, maybe I'll pick another game. This will be fine. We'll pick another one. But looking around, there still aren't that many 3.5 on Roll20.
yeah.
Which is why I was like, maybe I should just pick up 5th edition. Um, I don't know. And then I started thinking, you know what? I probably start getting all of my roles mixed up at that point.
yeah.
That's part of my concern. The other thing, the primary concern for me is just the lack of variety. Because, like, third edition, its biggest draw is the level of customizability and just the sheer number of options. Like, I've been playing it for as long as I have. And, like, just today, I found feats that I had never seen before, I didn't know about, that I think are pretty neat. So, like, there's so much stuff out there, and like, it is funny. Even the books that are on my shelf that I walk past just to get to my computer. I looked at was it Dragonlance campaign setting the other day, which I hadn't read for like 6, 7 years probably, and I'm like, oh my god, I didn't even remember this stuff was in there. Like, cool stuff I just found. So like, there's so much stuff with third edition, and things like fifth edition. I've heard from so many people that like it starts getting repetitive. Like it's great for like 2 or 3 campaigns, but then if you want to play a certain kind of character, like it's always going to be that kind of a character. Like there's not enough that you can do to make it different. Whereas in third edition, like if you want a sneaky character, You don't have to be a rogue. You could be. You could also be a sword sage, or you could be a beguiler, and like rogue is completely different with his sneak attack, like flanking, stab you in the back style combat, and skill monkey versus the caster that is beguiler versus the initiator that is sword sage, and those are just 3 base classes. There are even more base classes than that for a sneaky type, plus all the dozens of prestige classes that you could take as a sneaky type, and they all play differently. And you could have like a dozen, more than that, campaigns where you have a sneaky type character. And like that to me is just fantastic. Like you could just keep making different characters of the same style and make it your own.
So I will say for that, for a new person, that is freakishly overwhelming.
I can see that, yes.
So, like the first campaign I played in, it was the crazy DM, but all he stuck to core. So that was actually perfectly fine to learn in, because you just go to one little place, you go through there, it's like, okay, cool. Would I like to be a fighter, or a cleric, or a ranger, or a rogue, or a druid, which is what I ended up playing. I love playing druids. And that was fine. After you're there for a couple of months, maybe you want to look into something else. So like the way you run things with a still somewhat limited one works out okay. It's good for like the mid-range, because I'm like, okay, there's enough. I can find something different in here if I want to, or just do different flavors of core. But one that I played in was just, yeah, sure, whatever you want, anything in existence. And me being a relatively lazy researcher, I research enough for my work and for college. I didn't feel like researching in my gaming.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, no, whatever. I'll stick to these like 3 books. And then we had a couple people come in that would just have ridiculous things. I'm like, how are you doing that? It's like, oh, well, I have this feat from this book and that feat from this book. And then, if you read this book, I can take this and put it here and blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, fine. Cool. You do that thingamabob. I'm going to go play in the trees over here. So if you're brand new, if you can find a game that's somewhat limited, that's great. If not, definitely contact your DM before starting too much and be like, could you point me to like 3 books? This is the type of character I want to look at. I think I want to play. Which like 2 or 3 things should I read? And just kind of call it there, because you can change as you get up in levels, but especially to start out when you're building your character, don't drive yourself insane trying to find every single prestige class and feat and everything on the planet. It will fry your brain quite quickly.
This may be heresy to say on a 3.5 podcast, but 5th edition is a fantastic place for new players to start, because
Oh, I agree, though.
it is very simple.
Yeah, I agree with that
Which is,
wholeheartedly.
I mean, that is the point and the draw of it, and it's great for getting new people involved. I started a campaign, and I started in Pathfinder because I think it does improve on a couple things for 3.5. I know that's again, but
Yeah,
I do enjoy 3.5 as well. But my players were just, they'd never played. My wife played, but it's actually my brothers, and then my sister and her husband, and then my wife, that are all playing together. And only my wife had played before, and the rest of my siblings were just completely overwhelmed. Like, what is this? What am I supposed to be doing? And in 5th edition, it's, you attack, push the button on roll 20. Oh, you want to do this? Make this roll. There's no modifiers. There's no, the only modifier pretty much is you have advantage, which you roll twice, take the highest, or disadvantage, you roll twice, take the lowest. And it really is a great way to start. People can learn to be a character, learn how to, role play. And then, learn, they have, basic tactics and stuff. And then after you've done that, and you get bored and you do start to want to build more characters with more mechanical depth, then moving to Pathfinder 3.5 is, I think, a great way for people to do it. I feel like it'd actually be really good for wizards to do some sort of conversion there, like downgrade / upgrade your character into 3.5.
I mean, I used to agree exactly with what you said, but I've come to the decision that I think that um, it's part the change in rule set that you're going to get things mixed up or whatever, and that's not a big deal. But I think that for years, people started in third, and they learned it just fine. Like nothing's really changed. Like if you really want to learn D&D, then your probably best bet is to pick an edition that seems to fit your style and to learn that first, rather than just to go what's easy to get into. Just because, again, like I started with third edition just because like we started in like 2000 or 2001 and it was new and that's what we went with. So like you could totally do it if you're interested to learn and you're willing to put in the time to this tabletop RPG, then just go for it. If you want something simpler, more casual, then just go with fifth. But yeah, I don't think it's necessary to start with fifth just because it's easy, just to get an idea of what Dungeons and Dragons is. I think
It's
you
true.
could totally do third.
I do think that it's drawn more people into the tabletop RPG because of the simplicity of it, though. Because
Could
I
be.
know a lot of people who are like, and like I saw in my siblings a little bit, they were starting to kind of. I was losing them when they'd say, "Well, okay, you need to add this and then do this,"
Yeah.
because they didn't want to. Like they wanted to tell the story, they wanted to be the characters, they wanted to see where it happened, and so, you know, I think there's more people playing D&D now because they lowered the barrier to entry with that fifth edition.
That makes
So,
sense.
I mean, there's definitely something to be said for starting with that, and if you've got the drive where you want to learn all that,
I
but
think
if
also.
not,
Whoops, sorry.
oh, just saying, I mean, if not, then starting with fifth edition is a lot easier because then you can get in and see if you actually like it before putting in the time to learn a more mechanically intensive system.
Yeah. I think also, at least in part, comes to the fact that society in general is more open to role playing now. Like
That's all.
role
Yeah,
playing games in general. Also, there's more like Adventures League. There's more of a base set up where people can do it, and there's so much more of a history behind it. Like, third edition only had like first and second before it. Well, if you want to get more technical than that, you can get more technical. But anyway, now fifth has like those plus third plus fourth behind it. So like, there's many more years behind it of history that people know about it.
and it's
And
more visible publicly for like
right, right.
Stranger Things, and then Vin Diesel, and I'm
Uh
sure
huh.
I mean there's a bunch of other ones that I can't remember off the top that have come out and said, "Hey, I played D&D," and
Right. But I mean, that's
so,
I'm sure that's only part of it. I think that it's what you said as well, that lowering the barrier to entry.
hmm I do think though that it's become more visible as well, and that's people aren't as assumed. Like I first wanted to play D&D late high school, and my friends invited me, and I went home and I'm like, "Hey, mom, I'm gonna go over to my friend's house and play D&D," and I was not leaving the house for a while after that.
Yeah, actually, it's funny you say that because other Josh wanted to play D&D, but he couldn't because his mom was like, the super religious type where D&D is the
Yeah, that's
devil,
exactly what.
so he wasn't allowed to.
Yep. And yeah, I got that talk. I can't believe you would want to do that. It's devil worship, and summoning Satan, and they threw all my magic cards away.
That's something. My parents were not like that. They were like, yeah, sure, we'll buy you a couple of those books here.
Yep. Crazy religious parents. Good times.
Uh,
A couple people in my high school, I think, that wanted to play D&D, and one of my friends actually did get like a couple books together, but I grew up in the middle of nowhere where it's very rural, and even though we wanted to play, none of us had cars, um, and this was slightly before talk channels were a big thing. We just never actually worked out. But I don't think my parents ever cared. But I know I have a cousin who's been into it, and he's been into it since, oh God, probably like the 90s. Um, and I mean, when he gets in a better place, he's probably going to like run a couple games for us. Um, and he's definitely one of the people that's just way more into like the role playing um, aspect of all of it. And I think it's gonna be fun when he gets out because all he talks about is making like a giant immersive world. Like I think he wants to write the books if he could. Uh,
Yeah, it's easy to go overboard as DM.
Really,
but I mean, I think there is something for fifth edition being easier and getting people involved into it. Um, I don't know. I've never really played it, but I could see where if there's less math, then it sounds there is less math. Um, it could be good for kids too. We did have a couple kids show into a 3.5 game we were running, and I mean most of the math is pretty simple math, but it's just the add this and add this and add this and then subtract this and then do that like 5 or 6 times, and the kids were struggling just a little bit with that. So if there's a little less math in fifth edition, that could be good for kids too.
I don't think it's actually the math that's a problem so much as the figuring out where it all comes from. Like it's just a lot to hold in your brain at the same time with fifth edition or 3.5. I think is the big.
Yeah, I think it's both. I think there's a lot to track, and then, with all the addition of all the different modifiers and abilities and everything, and multipliers too. But
Roll20 is a godsend for that.
yeah, yes, Roll20 helps a lot. But one thing I've heard about fifth edition is that it's way, way easier for DMs.
It really is. Like, I mean, honestly, I can throw together a monster in 2 seconds. Like, they can walk up and I can say there's a goblin without having to look at a book, and can, it, all you need is, to hit AC, 8 points, and got a goblin. You don't have to worry about really any of the rest of it and just go for it. I mean, you could do it in other editions, but it really feels like there's a lot more you need to really be a good DM.
Well, I don't know if I should tell you this or not. That's pretty much what I do with our games. I generally have a few numbers in my head, and then after combat is like actually going on, I find the other important pieces. So
Yeah, I mean,
I love my rule of thumb, which is roll the dice first and see if I have to figure out whether or not it worked or failed. So until I get those, like I said, I find those important numbers. Before I find those important numbers, if that die isn't like, 17, 18, 19, 20, or like 1 to like 7, if it's one of those middle numbers, I'm like, quick, find it. But otherwise, it's like, yes, he hits you, or no, he missed. Carry on. It's just a matter of streamlining it, basically.
yeah. And I mean, part of that is the fact that you have been playing for this long, too. But,
Yeah, I mean, I know to do that.
Yeah. Then you're familiar enough with all the monsters and stuff that... But yeah, 5th edition is very... I mean, really, the whole idea is it gets gets the system out of the way. Which is, I mean, for a certain type of player, that's great, and a certain type of DM, but the reason I like D&D versus... some of these more free-form games that they have, like Fate and Powered by the Apocalypse and stuff, is I really enjoy the tactical part of it as well.
Yep.
Being able to seamlessly kind of transition your character between, talking with the shopkeeper to all of a sudden fighting, the goblin that showed up, that's the real appeal to D&D, because... I've thought about this for a long time when there's a lot of, the talk, why is D&D so popular? And I really think that mix is what makes it so good, is you have the two aspects, and so you can kind of juggle between them to not get bored, to give yourself more of a story. It's like the movies, Lord of the Rings, and you've got the fight sequences, which punctuate the story.
Right. And
Give a little
it's got some
break.
pretty clear origins with those stories too.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and I mean, fifth edition kind of. I guess it's kind of. I guess I just said kind of a lot, but it's like the more modern action films where instead of focusing on the like the difference between the old Star Wars lightsaber fights and the new ones. In the old ones they were careful, tactical. They would hit each other, back up, throw something, And the new ones are bouncing around all over the place, and you don't know what's going on. You're pretty sure that guy just won. So, 3.5, you take your time, plan what you're going to do, get all your modifiers, and in 5th edition, you roll a couple dice, and then it's over. And it can be just as cinematic, but there's not that crunch behind it.
Right.
I
I
don't know
would
if
say,
that analogy made any sense to you guys, but
as a new person playing, sometimes there is kind of something nice about just seeing the same thing over and over because you feel a little more comfortable with it. Um, so it's like, okay, there's a goblin. I know it's not going to one shot me. This makes me feel better. Um, and you get to try out new things because I know at least when I started playing, if I had no idea what it was, I was like my like natural cautiousness just kicked in and be like, yeah, so I have like a sling, but this seems like the best thing for me to do right now. Is just sling at this from my max range and hope I do a d4 of damage. um, and there's something good to be about that. You should like definitely um, mix things up, and you have to learn by fighting some new ones after a while. But I was also perfectly happy when it was like, oh, I'm in this forest and it's infested with X, like evil orcs. Cool. I know what that orc does. Yeah. And then after a while, it's a little easier. I played in one game where the DM there, um, super nice, just very, very excited, and always wanted to like throw something new and cool at us. Um, but had a bit of trouble like scaling the monsters correctly. So after the fight, he'd like, "Oh yeah, you fought X," and I'd go home and I'd research it and I'd be like, "Holy crap, that's got like AC 54 and a crush attack of like 3d12. No wonder it almost killed everybody because the only thing he'd do is like knock the health down." I'm like, "Okay, cool. That doesn't mean I can hit it any easier." Um, and if you fight too much of that in the beginning, um, it does feel kind of defeatist. So basically, the point is be a good DM.
let the players be heroic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like to feel like you're doing something after a while. Like it's, I can see how it'd be really hard to be a DM because you want to find that nice fine line between, okay, this isn't a grind. I'm not in a video game trying to grind out 10 more gold to buy the accessory, um, and Dark Souls where everything kills you by looking at you.
It's tough work being a DM, but it's rewarding.
So rewarding.
Well, that seems like a good place to wrap it up for the first time with you guys. So thanks for having this chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Alright, until next time.